You are watching Rules of the Game with Mark Cisco on Rider Nation Station, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, Hoglace Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Ideology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Quinary Pizzeria.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Rules of the Game on Rider Nation Station. I'm Joe Hurlbert, sitting in for Zach Farrell, and we're joined, as we are each and every week, by veteran official Mark Cisco. And Mark, again, welcome to the program.
Joe, it's always good to be here. Fresh face this week.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, we're going to apologize to our viewers that because of some technical issues and difficulties, we will not have clips of last week's game against the Shawnee Indians. But to my recollection, there wasn't anything, to my knowledge, that stood out as far as just a typical offside holding, things of that nature. There was nothing that, to me, stood out in that ball game. So what we're going to do is basically we're going to get to know Mark a little bit more. We're going to talk a little bit about officiating in the state of Ohio, things of that nature. We talked prior to going on the air of a situation that took place, and we'll touch base with that. But first of all, Mark, anything that took place around the state of Ohio that officials this week are being made aware of?
Well, there is one thing that happened a couple weeks ago, south of our current location here, and I'm not going to mention the game or the officials involved, but you cannot, the state of Ohio or the National Federation rule says you cannot use electronic means to basically influence or review a call, if you will, during the regular season. Now, some states have replay available for state tournaments or something like that, but not during the regular season. A situation occurred where at the end of the game, a team was set up to run a two-point conversion, and they didn't make it. But the offensive coach came out with an iPad in his hand, and he had a film clip. And that is expressly disallowed in the Federation rules. And the officials, unfortunately, took a look at it and decided that, yep, there was 12 men on defense because they could count them on the screen. And they went back and penalized and said, all right, we're going to replay the down. And, of course, the offensive team, it was a half the distance to the goal penalty. It was just enough. They ran for two, got it in, won the game over. That's expressly not allowed. And in my ball game and in most officials' ball games, we're not even going to entertain the thought of the coach coming out. And if he persists, then we're going to flag him for unsportsmanlike conduct and hopefully send him back to the bench without looking. And if he still persists, then he's going to get a second one, and then he's going to be disqualified from the remainder of the game, which carries its own penalties from the OSHA and the schools. So not a good situation there. Previous to that, somewhere in the country, playing the rules or the National Federation rules, the officials discovered that a quarterback was getting instructions through earphones, earpieces, if you will, headsets inside the helmet, which is also disallowed.
Really?
And the rule there is you're out until you can get your helmet replaced or get those earpieces out, and then the coach is again penalized for unsportsmanlike conduct because he verifies that all players are legally equipped. Well, the quarterback was not legally equipped. Right. So, yeah, it's not a good situation at all.
Going back to the 12 men on the field with the iPad, does the opposition coach have any recourse? Can he say this game? Do they play anything under protest?
I mean, there's no protest in the state of Ohio. Okay, so the officials' rulings are final. The OSHA is not going to overturn an error in judgment or rules or whatever. Their history has been we're not going to do that. What the referee's ruling is final, and that's what we're going to do. Now the other coach probably should have got him, the officials by the ear and said, look, you guys can't do this. By rule, it's not allowed. My guess is the other coach didn't know. That's my guess. Okay. And if he did know and tried and they just refused, I mean, short of just throwing a big stink and getting yourself tossed, and he's not going to do that. It's unfortunate, but apparently it happened.
Doesn't the final decision in a situation like that rest on the man in the white hat?
It does. And if the referee deemed that it was, allowable and everything else, then there's really no recourse. You're gonna do what happens. And
Right.
unfortunately, it was the wrong decision.
And do you ever foresee down the road high schools implementing replay of things like that, or is there a positive to it or a big drawback to it?
I think there's probably a positive to it. We see replay now in the pros and the college games and through a lot of sports. And of course, the OSHA has review of certain rules at the state tournament level, at the finals level.
Correct.
I could see it happening, filtering down into the state semis possibly, or even further down into the playoffs if there's cameras available.
Right.
Now, most of those games are not televised.
Sure.
And then you're just picking and choosing. So is it fair to one team to get there and one team not when you start? At the state finals, there's no games left for the year, so everybody's playing under the same rules.
Right.
At the regular season, I don't see it happen. There's just too much money that would have to be spent and things paid for. I just don't see that happening.
So you'd expect if that was to happen, schools would have to pay for it or things like that. Then you got to get personnel to do it.
Personnel to do it, and you have and right now we're having trouble getting officials.
Right.
Let alone folks that would be qualified to make rule reviews or something like that. I think it's a positive thing, but I don't think the economics outweigh the benefits here.
I agree. You talked about getting officials. How's things progressing as far as that is concerned? Is there any courses being available at this point in time?
Well, the OSHA has put out. They've changed the way they do officiating education. Mm-hmm. They're making classwork available online, and they're making it available throughout the year.
Sure.
So, the guy sitting there watching the Super Bowl in February and thinking, man, I should be able to do this better job than these guys do. Well, possibly. Well, the courses are available. And you can do that and get yourself all set up. And when it comes time to start working games or scrimmages or whatever, you may be ready to go. And, up until this year, the courses started sometime in July, and, new folks took them, and hopefully they got on the field.
Sure.
And, a lot of them did. But the trick is with new officials is keeping them past the first 2 years.
Right.
They get involved, and we want to do it, and then, they run into a little adversity, meaning players, coaches, fans, and they say, it's not worth that. And the surveys have shown that the fans are the biggest factor with new officials getting out, and some older officials for that matter.
Right.
They've had enough. So things have got to change. The state of Iowa just implemented some sort of rule that basically told the parents to back off.
Oh.
And so it's going to come to that, I think. Maybe not in my tenure, but somewhere down the road, it's going to get tougher.
Well, your tenure as an official is coming to a close, isn't it?
It's coming to a close. Yes, I've been around for a while, so it's time to move ahead for the younger folks.
So, you talked about the fan. What can an official do? Can an official remove any fan or any player or any coach that is?
We have ways to get to remove or disqualify players, coaches, team personnel.
Fans?
Fans, we leave that to. We're told to leave that to the
administration.
The game administration. Now, the tools available there are simply going to whoever's in charge. Sometimes it's the AD, sometimes it's somebody else, and say, "Hey, that person needs to go." And they normally will do it. We also have the tool to say, look, that person needs to go, and until he or she does, we're not playing the game.
Really?
We'll just stand here the rest of the night and the way we go.
Sure.
That's a great motivator for folks to leave.
Right.
And I know it happens in basketball. Sometimes the officials are up close and personal and will go to the AD or whatever and say that person needs to go, and we're not going to put the ball in play until he's gone. Really? So that's a tool that we have. We don't really like to do that.
Right.
And we've never done that, and that's rare, I think, in high school football. Mm-hmm. But we have gone to an AD prior to a game and had a fan settle down a little bit because he was, let's say, less than sporting towards the opposing team while they were warming up. And this is high school kids. Yeah. They don't need it. It's a classroom.
Right.
So, we get very little of that, but it happens once in a while.
Sure. Well, let's get to know you a little bit better. You've been at this a long time. You're
40 years.
40 years. Okay,
Yep.
So let's go back 40 years ago.
Oh, okay.
What in your right mind made you decide that, hey, I want to be an official. I want to go out there and be subject to all this abuse from fans and coaches and players. What made you decide to do that?
Quite honestly, I didn't think about fans, coaches, and players.
Really?
I had a great experience
Sure.
here at St. Mary's, and in my mind, the coaching staffs all over the world were like the staff that was here.
Right.
And, they were great to me. They were firm, they were fair, and quite honestly, I liked to practice. I really did. Games were great.
You're
but,
crazy.
But Coach Duncan and Coach Long, were fantastic and who I had the most contact with. And then even once in a while, when you'd go against Coach Freewald's defensive line once in a while, he was a great guy too. So, and you figure that all the staffs all over are like that. Well,
Right.
when you get into fishing, you learn that not all staffs are created equal.
Oh, yeah.
And not all head coaches are created equal. During my career, the best coach I think we ever had that was on the sideline was John Reed, God rest his soul, from Coldwater. John just basically said to us, look, you guys do the game, and I'll coach the kids, and we'll be fine. And he did that. Now, if he ever had the occasion to say something, it was controlled, and if he did say something, he probably had a point. There are so many others now, especially less experienced coaches, that they're young and they're not mellowed out, so to speak, and they want to, they're intense for their kids, and I get that.
Sure.
But it is a classroom and it is a teaching experience. So when I got into it, I just wanted to stay part of the game.
Right.
I couldn't play anymore.
Sure.
My playing days were over, and I just thought this would be a cool way to stay close to the game. And who knows? Maybe you'll get a chance to work a state title game someplace or whatever.
And that you have.
And that I have. But so it was just being part of the game.
Sure.
Money didn't matter to me at that
Right.
point.
Right.
It was just I wanted to be on the field and continue to be a part of something I thought was really super.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What changes have you seen over the years as far as maybe some of the rules that
Oh, absolutely.
you saw 40 years ago and the things that have progressed and changed over the years?
One of the big
to
things is
today?
they've taken blocking below the waist out of the game for the most part. When I started, you could run downfield and you could take out a cornerback by going down low, below the knees or something like that. Now you can't do that. Only blocking below the waist permitted now is just right at the line of scrimmage and almost immediately at the snap. Timing issues have changed. We've got a play clock now, which I think is a benefit to the game.
Right.
Used to be the referee would have sole discretion on when to start the clock after a change of possession or punt, something like that. Now it's all play clock driven, which takes some of that subjectivity out of my hands. And various rules along the way, blindside blocks, trying to make the game safer, the targeting rules, and those are all fairly recent, but those are just designed to keep kids playing and basically to keep the, I guess, government out of the game.
Right.
Because when you're dealing with concussions and things of that nature, we have to police ourselves, so to speak. Otherwise, it's going to get taken out of our hands.
Right.
So
There you go.
now the weirdest thing, I'm going to switch gears on you here. We talked about this once a year or something like that. It's the rule where you can fair catch, let's say, a kick, and you can basically tell the kicking team or the defense then to back up 10 yards because we're going to free kick it.
Right.
There's a coach in the Western Buckeye League that I've had do that twice.
Really?
Yes, and he even told us about it earlier in the season that maybe he would do that should the opportunity present itself.
Right.
So, if you're punting from your own end zone and you got the right time and the wind or wherever, and it's a short punt, we could fair catch it as a receiving team, maybe let's say at the 20, and bring out our kicker and put it down on the 20 and tell the defense to back up 10 yards, and we're going to try to kick it through the uprights for points. We've seen that.
And you can put it on a tee.
Yes, you can.
You don't have to actually have a holder. You can put it on a tee, and he can line her up and kick it.
I don't know if you remember, but we saw that in a state finals
We
game.
did. We did.
Right?
We saw that.
So-
Absolutely. Mark and I are going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have more with referee Mark Cisco on rules of the game, and we continue right after this break.
You are watching Rules of the Game with Mark Cisco on Rider Nation Station. Brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, Oglaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Guarneri Pizzeria.
All righty, we welcome you back once again to Rules of the Game. I'm Joe Hurlbert, filling in for Zach Farrell. alongside Mark Cisco. And Mark, we were talking about officiating over the years, your career and things, and how things have changed over the course of the year. Any other things that you would like to add?
Just a
or
game,
have seen?
just something we had that fans don't see very often. We had a situation last week where the defensive team forced a fumble in the end zone, okay, which is no problem. I mean, they get a touchdown out of it. But when my linesman turns around, and we're standing about the 5-6 yard line, when he turns around, he's got two coaches and half the team standing beside him, which is against the rules.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they're excited. Yes, it's a big play for the defense and all that other good stuff. But, the coaches have a box that they have to stay into similar to basketball.
Right.
And it runs from the 25 to the 25. And, okay, we're down on the goal line. We're not going to see them step out, 2 or 3 yards, no big deal. But when you end up standing beside me on the sideline, that's a problem. So, my wing guy throws a flag, and it's a 5 yard, it's a sideline warning. Now, the first one, no yardage. And I told the head coach that. I said, Coach, you get no yardage out of this. It's just a warning. Now, the next one, it's going to cost you 5, and anything after that's going to cost you 15. Well, he wasn't happy because, we're supposed to be excited for the kids and everything else. Sure. And I said, that's fine, but, you got to play by the rules. So we issued the warning, and away we went. But the point is, we know you're excited, but you have to control that in this game. Skip used to say, look, you play with controlled aggression, and you do. You can be excited and everything else, but you can't lose your mind over situations.
Right.
So that was just something that happened to us, and it happens once in a while.
It does, but let's go up a level. Let's go college and professional sports. You see defensive players celebrate, stand over, whatever the case may be, and that's fine. That's kind of overlooked.
That's not fine.
Well, it's not fine, but they allow it to happen, but yet somebody does an excessive celebration in the end zone, they get flagged.
Yes.
And it is, and it's an emotion, and it's an emotional game.
It's an emotional game.
And
it is.
And I would think that you wouldn't want to take that emotion out of the game, but
no.
It has to be controlled, and I get that. Excess is excess, and so
it goes
how do you do that?
To sportsmanship and taunting,
It does.
especially at the high school level. And we've got a list of things that we are supposed to allow. Running back running into the end zone, pointing up to the sky real quick and comes down. That's fine. That's not a problem. That's a quick boom, 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 no big deal. Now, if he turns and he spins the football like they do in the college or the pros,
right.
That's not fine. We had a play last night in a lower level game where the kid was excited, youngster, and he scored, and he did a front flip and something like that, and well, that's not fine either. And the coaches knew it, and then the kid understood it, and he picked the ball up and he was going to spike it. Unfortunately, one of his teammates said, no, don't even add insult to injury, something like that. So they're excited, and we get that. But, it's all about sportsmanship and trying to not to, taunt your opponent. Sure. That's what some of that's all about.
But when he gets 45 years old, he gets to tell his grandkids, hey, look, when I was in 8th grade, this is what I did. You can talk around the Thanksgiving table about
probably
like
won't
that.
remember the 8th grade thing, but maybe he won't do it in a varsity game and cost him some big dollars sometime, right?
Absolutely. So where are you at this week?
We are headed to Central Ohio, North Union and Benjamin Logan. 5-1 versus 2-4. On paper, it doesn't look like it would be a great game, but you never know. Yeah. You never know. A team comes in and thinks that we have this, or the other team comes in and says, no, we got just as much chance. Can turn into be a really great game. So.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. That brings up, this will be our final question of the program. How do you get assigned a game? And do you know at the beginning of the season where you're headed and when?
We do know at the beginning of the season. Each conference now, over the past several years has went to assigners. So there's one guy that's a conference commissioner or wherever, and normally that's where we'll get our games. Now, some non-league games that are between, let's say, the Western Buckeye League and maybe a MAC, maybe the home AD will assign that game, but sometimes the assigners for that conference, home school, will assign it. So we're really lucky in this area. We've got, games in 3 or 4 conferences, and they normally keep us on the same points in the schedule, week 4, 8, whatever they are. And we just, in the Western Buckeye League, we tend to have the same 2 teams, both home and home.
Okay.
And some schools will move us around, but on the same dates. So Absolutely. That's normally the way it's done.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to conclude our program, Rules of the Game with Mark Cisco. Once again, I want to remind everybody that we'll be on the air around 6:30 this Friday night for the Hall of Fame game, and the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies will start approximately 6:30 on the field. We'll be there to bring you all that coverage. So, Mark, best of luck this week and safe travels.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's a pleasure.
For Zach Farrell, I'm Joe Hurlbert along with Mark Cisco. We'll see you next week with Rules of the Game right here on Rider Nation Station. Until then, so long, everyone.
You are watching Rules of the Game with Mark Cisco on Rider Nation Station. Brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, Oglaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Ideology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Speed's Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Guarneri Pizzeria. Thanks for watching another episode of Rider Nation Station. Help us help you by subscribing on YouTube or following us on Facebook.